So when you're going to be buying pencils, you want to start looking for these big sets like this one, which is rather old now, but they range from H to B, H being the harder pencils and B being the softer, which actually B meaning blackness. So usually I stick within the B range usually because I don't find any use for using the H ones, because I often use something that's called a tortillon. Now this is a whole bunch of them here that I keep together, and they basically are little rolled up pieces of paper. You can even make your own, but I don't waste my time like that. I just buy them pre-made, and they last basically forever if you use them correctly. Basically you want to use circular motions when you're shading. Try not to do up and down. And you'll see how this one has a dark tip, and then I keep the ones that are white still. So you can make those shades that the H pencils will do, but much easier just using one of these. And usually I don't push that hard either, or try not to, because you'll damage the papers. So again, you want to be as light as you can on the paper, and then use these to spread the graphite out. The pencil, sorry, graphite, the same thing, as smooth as possible. Now, that's mostly for drawings that I keep to 8.5 by 11 up to 11 by 14, things like that. And when you start going bigger than that, huge drawings, you can use things like this, which is a cami. It's basically lambskin. They usually come in these huge pieces like this, and you can find them for pretty cheap in like car stores, because people use them to buff the outside of their car when they're washing them. But you can just cut off small pieces like this that you can, kind of wrap up and use to a point, and use on larger pieces when you're going to be spreading out against a large surface area to kind of get an even gray tone. They work best for charcoal. That's where you'll use them if you're taking like life drawing or anything like that in college or high school. They'll show you for charcoal, but they do work on graphite, I found. It's just I don't use them for anything that I'm doing smaller than 11 by 14 for sure. There's just too small of an area. And so yeah, your pencils that come in the sets will look like this. This is a Derwent set. Again, I usually buy the sets that range all in the Bs, and then as I use up certain ones, then I just buy them singly. So if you're needing to invest in pencils, the best thing to do, especially if you're in the US, is to buy these sets like this. Usually look for like a Michaels coupon on their website or in the Sunday papers. They usually have 50% off coupons, which is a real steal for a lot of your art supplies. That's how I, when I lived in the US, would buy up everything that I needed. And then for erasers, something that I had gotten turned on to when I first started to learn how to draw is actually to use old typewriter erasers. So they look kind of funny. They have this little brush at the end, and then this white kind of spongy top. I don't know how to explain it, but they're really good for getting tiny areas. Not just huge areas you need to erase, but kind of getting in there closely. They don't come to a very fine tip, sadly, even though if you take an X-Acto to it, it never really gets that sharp or stays sharp for very long. But they are a nice little tool to have around. Otherwise, I almost exclusively use a kneadable eraser, which is the little gray squishy erasers. So yeah, I usually will get several packs and then keep them until they become so oil filled, because the oils from your hand will get into it. So technically you shouldn't try to just knead it and play with it as much as you can, because you'll start ruining it faster than if you really just used it as needed on the drawings. But still, I usually keep them around until they basically just paste. And then I throw them out and get new ones. They're not expensive and definitely need to have some on hand. Another pencil that's useful are these really huge graphite sticks. It's really big. This one is by Faber-Castell. It is a 4B, so it's a pretty dark pencil, but you don't want your hands to get so messed up, so I just cover it in tinfoil on the back and you're good to go. again, that's like for large areas. So like a background drawing, you just kind of need to start getting in some dark colors on. I would start use that, and then I'd go in with the cami and kind of start to spread it out and get an even tone. You'll also find things like this, which is a blending stump, which is very similar to the tortillions. Usually you can get Derwent ones. They usually come in drawing packs too, so those are useful. They do come in handy. Again, use circular motions. Try to, not big ones, small circulars, and keep going out and out and out until you get the range that you're looking for in your drawing. So the other thing you'll get is this sandpaper, which honestly I don't use. I think that's probably because I almost draw exclusively with a mechanical pencil, which I use 2B, so that'd be 2 hardness for my pencil leads in it. So I always get a sharp point, where this is really to get your pencil on and try to sharpen it to a fine point. But what I find in the end is that you end up wasting a ton of graphite on it trying to get it to a sharp point. So I never use them personally. I never buy a set that comes with it unless I absolutely had to. But yeah, I almost exclusively draw with a mechanical pencil because that's the way I was taught initially. This is just a Pilot Dr. Grip 0.5, which is the most common of pencil lead thickness, so I always stick with that. But you don't have to get even anything that's expensive as this. This is maybe like 10 bucks. So even the cheap ones that are, you know, just a few bucks will be just as good as this. As long as it's comfortable in your hand and you can keep drawing with it for a long time, you're fine. Oh, and something else that's useful is when you get your pencils down to these little nubs and it's really hard to draw with, to extend the life a little more, is to buy these things. This is from Generals. It's basically just a pencil extender. So you just push it in the top and then you move this little metal bar up so that it's secure, and then you can still hold a pencil the way you normally would and get into those fine places and keep using it all the way down to basically nothing. So really good. I think it's just a few bucks. Totally worth it. I found mine at Michael's because I actually used to work at Michael's when I was in high school, so a lot of my art supplies is still leftovers from then. So something to think about if you're looking for a job as an artist and you need something as a day job, is to work at an art store and use the discounts a lot. So I guess that's it. If you have any other questions about art supplies for drawing, I'll do some other art supplies explanations for painting and watercolors and things like that later. But I'm about to start doing a tutorial set of videos, so I thought I'd better introduce some of these items before you actually see them being used. So I hope you'll stay tuned and like and click subscribe. Links below to the different companies that I've used here, and you can buy them online, I'm sure.